Here's the translation of the revised story into English. This is the story of the greatest war the world has ever seen. It's a tale filled with tragedy and destruction, a time when the worst atrocities were committed, claiming the lives of 74 million people, 4.5 million Germans, 21 million Chinese, 21 million Russians, 6 million Jews, and 3.5 million Japanese. These numbers send a warning to the world across time, reminding us of what can happen if we forget the lessons of the past. In March 1933, a new chancellor was elected for Germany, Adolf Hitler. He didn't seize power through coups or violence, but through the very democratic laws of Germany, which he publicly vowed to destroy. Hitler aimed to complete what had not been achieved in World War I, even if it meant shedding the blood of millions. To understand World War II, we must first go back to the war that preceded it, World War I, 1914 to 1918. Without knowing the events of that great war, we cannot comprehend the conflict that shook the world between 1939 and 1945. Even the battles fought on the remote islands of the Pacific and in the dense jungles of Asia during World War II cannot be understood without knowing their roots. By 1939, the leaders of the world were men whose minds and experiences had been shaped by the First War. Adolf Hitler had served as an infantry soldier in the trenches of the Western Front, witnessing firsthand the devastation that industrial warfare inflicted on an entire generation. When the world's leaders stood after the war to honor the fallen soldiers and laid wreaths on monuments across the continent, they could feel the presence of millions of souls standing silently behind them. But why did war return to Europe in 1939? To answer that, we must understand the reasons behind World War I and how it ended. Germany's problem in 1914 was clear. How could this new state be accepted as a great power alongside the old powers of France, Russia, and Britain? The escalating tensions and rivalries between these nations ultimately led to war. World War I ended in strange and unexpected circumstances. In the East, Germany had achieved significant victories against Russia. But suddenly in 1918, the fighting stopped with the declaration of an armistice. This armistice was only a temporary halt in fighting and not a true end to the conflict. At the Treaty of Versailles, signed after the war, the great powers, France, Britain, Italy, and the United States, tried to create a security system that would ensure peace in Europe. However, Lenin's revolutionary Soviet government wasn't invited to the conference, and Germany was only called upon to sign the treaty. The French insisted that the treaty placed the blame squarely on Germany for starting the war, while the British saw the conflict as a tragic mistake. Every line in the Treaty of Versailles blamed Germany, and instead of guaranteeing peace, the treaty became a recipe for another war. It imposed harsh economic and military penalties on Germany, which lost vast territories, especially in the East. New nations like Poland were created, which gained access to the sea, leaving millions of Germans as a minority in Poland. The Treaty of Versailles established a new Europe where Germany remained powerful but was surrounded by weak and small states. The sense of anger and resentment among the Germans grew, as they felt betrayed after the First War and saw the treaty as nothing more than humiliation. Germany's economy suffered greatly from the financial reparations imposed by the treaty, and its army was reduced to only 100,000 soldiers. Germany was even denied the modern weapons, like tanks and planes, that had changed the course of World War I. Meanwhile, the League of Nations was established, but it was weak from the very start. The new map of Europe, drawn after the war, laid the groundwork for another conflict. While the Treaty of Versailles aimed to bring peace, it set the conditions that made the next war inevitable. Germany, unsatisfied with these terms, waited for the right moment to seek revenge, and thus the world returned to war in 1939. This version is now fully translated into English, preserving the structure and flow of the original story.